July 19th, 2026, New Jersey. The World Cup final has just ended. Spain are champions. Argentina have lost. One goal in the 106th minute. And now, a man in a light blue and white shirt walks slowly across the pitch. 39 years old, at the 6th World Cup of his life, and the last one he will ever play. Then look at the stands. 82,000 people rise to their feet. They are not applauding the champions. They are applauding him, the man who just lost. Think about that for a second. An entire stadium standing for someone who has just been beaten in the biggest match on earth. To understand why, you have to go back 28 years to an 11-year-old boy who saw fear in his parents' eyes for the very first time. Rosario, Argentina. Long before the stadiums, long before the trophies, long before the world learned his name, there was only a small boy and a football. He wasn't the loudest child, and he wasn't the strongest. If you had met him back then, you probably wouldn't have remembered him. He spoke quietly, he smiled shyly, and some days he barely spoke at all, until somebody rolled a ball toward him. Then the silence disappeared, not because he started talking, but because the ball started talking for him. His father, Jorge, worked at a steel factory. His mother, Celia, cleaned houses part-time and worked at a magnet plant to help hold the family together. There wasn't much money, and there was no luxury, but there was love, and there was football every single day until the sun went down. His first club wasn't Barcelona, it was Grandoli, a small neighborhood team a few streets from his house. The goalposts were rusty, the pitch was uneven, and nobody imagined that history was quietly beginning there. Nobody, except one person. His grandmother, his mother's mother, and she was also named Celia. She was the one who insisted he play with the older boys. She walked up to the coach herself and told him, "Put him on." The coach said the boy was far too small. She said it again, "Put him on." She took him to training. She waited in the cold. She cheered louder than anyone. She died in 1998. He was 11 years old. She never saw any of it. Not one goal, not one trophy, not one stadium. Years later, people noticed that after every goal, Lionel pointed both fingers toward the sky. Most of them thought it was just a celebration. It wasn't. It was a conversation, without words, and every single goal was still for her. Because long before the world believed in Lionel Messi, one person already did. Around that same time, the other boys started growing, taller, stronger, faster. Lionel didn't. At first, nobody panicked because children grow at their own pace, until the doctors gave the family an answer: growth hormone deficiency. Without treatment, his body might never develop the way it should. The treatment existed: daily injections, one every evening, at a cost of around $900 a month, money the family simply did not have. Lionel didn't understand the numbers, and he didn't understand debt. But children notice the things adults think they're hiding: the silence at dinner, the whispered conversations in the next room, the way a father stares at the floor, the way a mother keeps smiling even when she's terrified. That was the first time he saw fear in his parents' eyes, and without anyone saying a word, he understood. Now imagine this: you're 11 years old. Every evening, you pick up the syringe yourself. You give yourself the injection in your own leg. Tonight the right leg, tomorrow the left, so the skin has time to heal. Every evening, without missing one, for more than 3 years. Not for fame, not for money, not for trophies. Just to keep the dream alive for one more day. By the time he was 13, the family had run out of time. Hope couldn't pay for the treatment anymore, and then a phone call came from the other side of the world. Barcelona, 10,000 kilometers away. Not a contract, not a promise, just a trial, just a chance. You can chase your dream, but first you have to leave behind everything you've ever known: your home, your friends, your school, your country. He didn't leave Argentina looking for adventure. He left because he was running out of options. Years later, people would call it destiny. Back then, it felt like goodbye. The first months in Barcelona weren't magical. They were lonely. The city was beautiful, but beauty doesn't stop you from missing home. Everything felt foreign. The streets, the voices, even the football itself. In Rosario, football was instinct. Here, it was precision. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the special kid anymore. He was just another boy trying to survive. He barely spoke. He simply waited for the ball. And when he got it, the coaches went quiet. One touch and two defenders were gone. Another touch and a third disappeared. Silence. Not because nobody cared, but because nobody could quite process what they had just seen. The paperwork dragged on, and the family started to fear they'd have to go back to Argentina. So the club's sporting director, Carlos Rexach, wrote his promise to sign the boy on a paper napkin. Everyone remembers the napkin, but the napkin isn't the point. The point is that someone looked at a frightened 13-year-old and said, "We believe in you." 4 words. Sometimes that's all it takes to change an entire life.
On October 16, 2004, he walked onto the pitch in a Barcelona shirt. He was 17, and what followed is still hard to explain. He won everything there is to win in club football. 4 Champions League titles, 10 Spanish League titles, 8 Ballon d'Or awards, more than anyone in history. People stopped arguing about whether he was the best player in the world and started arguing about whether he was human at all. They called him a genius, an alien, a magician. He never called himself any of those things. He went home, played with his kids, and showed up to training the next morning as if yesterday had never happened. And for 15 years, Cristiano Ronaldo walked the same road beside him. Every goal, every trophy, every award. People argued endlessly about which of them stood higher. Maybe that was the wrong question, because without one, the other might never have climbed so far. But there was one place where none of it seemed to count: Argentina. Every time he landed in Buenos Aires, the trophies stayed behind in Europe. Only one question traveled with him: can you do it with us? 2014, Brazil, the World Cup final. The 113th minute, Götze scores. Silence. There's a photograph from that night. Lionel walks past the World Cup trophy. He doesn't touch it. He doesn't even look at it. He just walks by. Sometimes one photograph tells the whole story. A year later, another final, another defeat on penalties. A year after that, another final, and again penalties, and again defeat. 3 major finals in 3 years. 3 broken hearts. And that's when people who had never felt an ounce of that pressure started speaking with total certainty. He's not Maradona. He disappears in the big games. Nobody asked how much it was hurting him. After the final in 2016, he stood in front of the cameras. His face said everything before he opened his mouth. My time with the national team is over. The best player of his generation simply walked away, and 5 years later, he lost his second home too. August 2021, a press conference in Barcelona. 21 years at one club, and he's leaving against his own will. He steps up to the microphone. He opens his mouth and nothing comes out. Someone hands him a tissue and he wipes his eyes. The same paper that started it all. Back then they wrote a promise on it that they were taking him in. Now he needed one just to say goodbye. Here's the thing about people. The strongest ones aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who quietly find a reason to stand back up. He came back to the national team, not because the criticism had stopped. It hadn't. Not because it had gotten any easier. It hadn't. He came back because some dreams are worth risking your heart for one more time. 2021, the Maracanã, the Copa America final against Brazil. Di Maria scores, the final whistle blows, and Lionel doesn't celebrate. He just sits down on the grass, head lowered, eyes full of tears. His first major trophy with Argentina in 16 years. 18 months later, Qatar, the World Cup final, and a penalty shootout. He places the ball on the spot. He has taken thousands of penalties in his life, but never one like this. The boy who once gave himself injections in his own leg just so he could grow was now standing over a ball with the entire planet watching. He takes a breath. He runs forward. Goal. Montiel scores the last penalty, and Argentina are world champions. Lionel drops to his knees, not because he won, but because the journey was finally complete. And now we're back in New Jersey, July 19th, 2026, 39 years old, the last match of his last World Cup.
Spain score in extra time, 1-0. Millions were bracing for heartbreak. The same heartbreak they saw in 2014, the same heartbreak they saw in 2016. But this time, it was different. He didn't look broken, he looked grateful. He applauded the stands, he embraced every teammate, he congratulated every opponent. There was no regret in his eyes, because regret belongs to people who believe they could have given more. He couldn't have. He had already given everything. And now you understand why 82,000 people stood up. They weren't applauding a result. They were applauding the road. When he was 11, doctors told his parents their son might never grow. They could never have imagined that one day he would help millions of people grow instead. Not taller, but stronger and braver. People will remember the goals, the dribbles, the trophies, the records. But records eventually get broken. Trophies gather dust, and statistics become history. The only thing that never disappears is the way somebody made you feel. He reminded us that the quietest kid in the room can still change the world.
That kindness doesn't make you weak. That humility doesn't get in the way of greatness. That losing doesn't define your story. And that the people who inspire us most are almost never the loudest ones. They're the ones who simply refuse to stay down. Maybe the world fell in love with a little boy from Rosario. Also, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments which famous people you would like to see in our videos. Thank you.